Hello and welcome to the Blues Kind Show, the show for kind blues. Firstly, before I get into today's video, big congratulations to the Brisbane Lions Football Club. Back-to-back premierships is amazing, great achievement. And given they were down the bottom of the ladder at the same time that we were at our absolute worst, sort of, through that mid-tens period, say 2015 to 2018-ish, it gives me some faith that our club can go from cellar dwellers to powerhouse in the way that they have. Gives me some faith that maybe our future can be bright as well, but, let's see. Anyway, good on them. They've done a fantastic job of building their football club up. Great coach, ridiculously good players. But if you want a more thorough analysis of the game and their football club, this is not the channel for you. Secondly, I just want to thank everyone for the recent support. My most recent video about Carlton's list and depth of the list was my best performing video to date, and the comments and feedback have been really, really nice to see. It means a lot to me. I've started making videos during the course of this season, and to see such a nice turnout and people by and large being really positive, and even if they're stating what might be a negative opinion, everyone's been really respectful. It's just lovely to see. So I just want to express my very heartfelt gratitude for everyone who's providing me with a little bit of support so far. I'm glad that it seems some people are enjoying what I'm doing, which gives me a little bit of a shot in the arm to keep doing it. So, hopefully this could be on to bigger and better things. Now, ahead to the trade period of this year, I wanted to discuss the rumours that have sort of been doing the rounds, as well as some things that we know as more concrete fact. My aim with this video is to give a balanced take on what moves could mean for us, but as always, unless I'm stating something that has been reported publicly, I'm just expressing my opinion. So if I have a different view on how much a guy might be worth or whether we should keep him or not, it's all good. The fun part of footy is having these sorts of opinions. So if you agree with me or if you disagree, let me know in the comments. I had some really nice exchanges with people sort of putting forward their trade ideas and stuff. So, I look forward to a few more, hopefully, which would be excellent. Now, this video might go for a little bit of time. I'm expecting a roughly 30-minute run time. As always, I'm doing it in one take, so I don't always know exactly how long it's going to go for. But just so that, you might want to be able to skip ahead to the part that you're most interested in, I'm going to start with the players that are expected to come in, but I'm not going to touch on any of the drafted players or the players we expect to take in the draft. So no Harry Dean, no Jack Eisen, just the players that have expressed their desire to come to the Blues. I'll then discuss the players who have already left and are leaving for other clubs. So not going to discuss Sam Doherty or anything like that. At the minute, it's just Jack Silvagni and Tom de Koning. And then finally, I'm going to discuss the players that I expect may leave. And I'm going to finish with Charlie because he has the most info going around him. He's the highest profile player. It'll be the biggest trade if it occurs. So, we have a few players that have actually asked to come to what the media would like you to believe are the struggling and lackluster Blues. But I'm not going to pretend that any of the players coming in are world beaters, at least not yet. That could still yet change. But yes, they're guys that are either looking for opportunity or, in the case of the first bloke, a guy who wants to come home. Campbell Cerra has played 36 games for the Eagles after being taken pick 14 in the 2021 draft. The 2021 draft may yet go down as the best draft ever, frankly. If you go back and look at it, it's something like 11 of the first 12 picks are already really, really good players. And the guy that I'm excluding is Neil Erasmus at Fremantle. Sorry to specifically pick out a guy. But he showed a lot of really good signs this year. So, might go 12 from 12 in the end. So, really strong draft. He was taken pick 14. He was taken 2 picks after Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera, and he was taken just before guys like Lika Lear and Darcy Wilmot. Maybe he's a miss by the Eagles. Like, drafts don't always go every single pick in the first round's amazing. So maybe he is a miss. But I think given how strong the draft is in retrospect, he's definitely worth the risk. Because I frankly don't think he's that high of a risk. As a junior, he was played as a midfielder. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm some sort of draft maven. But a lot of what I understand was he was a burst, breakaway pace sort of guy who didn't mind slotting a couple of goals. Like, he seems quite confident in how he played, but going to such a struggling club and largely being played as a forward, particularly a small forward, so a bit out of position, probably didn't help his development all that much. I'm not going to pretend that I know heaps about the draft. Once again, that's not my strong suit, but because it depends on the year. So that particular year, we actually traded away our first round pick for Adam Cerra. So I'm not going to act like I followed it all that closely. The guy that he makes me think of a little bit is Elijah and the circumstances in which we got him from the Suns. They've both been in the system for a couple of years. They were both first round draft picks. They both had their issues, although Campbell Chess's issues are mainly injury related. I really think he's worth a swing because I don't think he's going to cost a heap. I think maybe it'll be a second round pick, but more likely a third rounder, potentially a future third. If you got a guy who's got a lot of upside, again, first round pick, pace to burn, he could be an excellent pick. Again, not forecasting all Australians, but like a really solid player. He's got some traits that we desperately need, mainly run and carry, burst, and he's quite tidy by foot. We'll see how we go. The next guy up is someone that I'm really excited for, and we can look at the grand final from the weekend as to why. Neither team in the grand final had a super high pick as their ruck, with Reece Stanley being traded for pick 21 from St Kilda to Geelong as the highest drafted guy by the club that they're presently at. Then there was Mark Blixavs, who was a rookie convert from Athletics. Oscar McInerney was, I believe, a rookie drafted player. And Darcy Fort was traded from Geelong, funnily enough, to Brisbane for a late pick. Liam Reidy is the sort of guy that I would like us to take risks on, because if you whiff on them, they don't cost you a lot. And for the position he plays, which is ruck, I think that he is an excellent candidate. This is probably something for a longer video, so I'm not going to get into it in full, but I am a big believer in not spending draft picks or money, frankly, on ruckman. I think that hitouts are the most overrated stat in the game, and the second, honestly, might be hitouts to advantage. Additionally, rucks take a long time to develop. So getting a guy like Reidy, who's presently 25 years old, 204 centimetres, and if you look him up, the guy is built like Lloyd Meek. So he should be ready to go. And even if that just means that he plays in our twos and he's ready to come in, if Pitnet or Hudson O'Keefe got injured, I think that's the sort of way you should spend your money. He's also won a Waffle Premiership in 2024 whilst he was on Fremantle's list. And he was the Peel Thunder Best and Fairest winner this year. So winning a State League Best and Fairest for a team, I think, suggests that he's really got some traits, because there was some, there'd be obviously other Fremantle listed players that were going to be playing in the twos, plus whatever high-class Waffle players they had as well. He's only played the 3 AFL games, but I don't think that should be any cause for concern when you consider in the last couple of years, they've had Luke Jackson, Sean Darcy, and Lloyd Meek on their list. Lloyd Meek's been at Hawthorn for 2 seasons now. Prior to that, he was obviously at Fremantle. So he had a couple of guys that he was behind. Given they're 3 of the better ruckmen in the league, I think it's sort of fair that he hasn't really seen the light of day yet. But he is the sort of guy with a little bit of opportunity could come out of his shell a bit. He's therefore in the sweet spot for rucks as far as the way I like them. He's physically ready and super cheap. I'd imagine a third rounder would be all that is needed, and he should be ready to be at least an injury backup. But given the raps on him, and the fact that he does have a couple of credentials, a couple of accolades in the last 2 seasons, there's a chance that he could do a little bit more. The last guy that has said, make me a blue, is Buku Khamis. Buku's played 41 games in 8 seasons, and I know that sounds really low, but he was a convert to footy and has taken some time to develop. His first couple of years, Luke Beveridge even said that he was something like 1,000,000 to 1 chance of ever playing a game. And he's played all 41 of his games in the last 4 seasons. So since he's sort of really gotten the hang of it, he has been a somewhat regular player in a team that goes in and out of the finals every other year. So not bad. He's 190 centimetres, and I think he's a really good candidate as a third tall back because he's especially strong in the air. I'd say his number one trait is his marking. He's the classic convert where he's quite athletic, but as opposed to some other converts, his skills aren't too shabby. He's a decent kick, and in the back line, I'd back him to not need to take on the hardest kicks in the world. Frankly, I'd love to see a lot of Nick Newman wrapping around the back, get the easy hand pass and go. If he can be a guy that can pick off a couple of intercept marks here and there and largely lock down a player, I think he could be excellent and really on the fringe of regularly being in our team. Where I would say that Buku has suffered over the course of his career is where a lot of talls for Luke Beveridge suffer, getting thrown from end to end. For the first 27 games of his career, he was almost exclusively played as a back, and then this year, he was played exclusively as a forward. He kicked 13 goals in about as many games this year, so not bad returns, but again, if you wanted to continue his development, I think you kind of needed to keep him in one place, especially when you consider how loaded the Bulldogs' front half is, but how, absent their key defenders are. I'm not really sure why, but Luke does have a tendency to flick taller guys around. But that's a discussion for another day. For the Blues, we have pitched to him that he's going to be settled in defence, and I think that's better for him as it would give him, a consistent area that he can develop on. If we give him a 2 or 3 year deal, try to settle him down and say, look, mate, over the next 50 games, we're going to try to really mold you to a role. And I think it's better for us as well because that is an area that we do need a little bit of depth. He has a year to go on his contract at the Dogs, so I'd imagine maybe a second rounder is required, but again, it could be a third that might be needed to get the deal done. I actually think this could be that sort of classic deal where it's Buku and a pick for 2 picks of ours, where it might be, say, Buku and a third from the Dogs for our third and a fourth or something, or a second and a fourth, something like that, where really they're just sort of moving the points values around. Personally, I'm really happy with the 3 guys that have said want to come to us. Again, I'm not expecting any of them to become all Australians, but I do expect that all of them could immediately add to our depth in their respective positions. And given the depth issues that we had across the year, where we did have firstly a lot of injuries and, we really got to see the full list, having a few extra ready bodies, I think could be really helpful. So, in my last video, I touched on the names of some guys leaving in free agency, and then also some who have been rumoured to move. I'm going to start with the guys that are definitely gone. Jack Silvagni has left us as a free agent. I'm going to keep this one pretty brief. As I said in a previous video, I think that the reported deal of 5 years at $900,000 a season isn't quite enough for Band 1 compensation. In other words, a pick that would be tied to our first round pick, or where it would have been had we not traded it to Hawthorn, but instead should give us Band 2 compensation, which would be a pick at the end of the first round. So before any father sons or academies or any other compensatory picks, that would be pick 19. It'll obviously get pushed out a little bit, but as I said in the previous video that I did that more fully explains my reasons for thinking this is the compensation that we're going to get, If anyone gave us a pick between 20 and 30 for Jack Silvagni, I would have been stunned, and I would have said that is the most lopsided deal that could have occurred. So personally, I'm very happy to get that amount of compensation for a guy who, frankly, played half a good season. And then there's also the sort of circus that goes on around it. I know a lot of people really like Jack Silvagni. I am not necessarily one of them. I think he's a nice player. I've also done another video about why I don't think he's really been hard done by the club. I think that he has benefited tremendously from his position at the club. But look, all the power to him. He's got a really nice deal lined up from his dad, so, that's great. Good for him. He's off. We're going to get a pretty good pick for him in return. If it ends up being band 1 compensation, I'm going to be ecstatic. If it's band 2, I'm just going to be very happy. On you, Jack. Thanks for your contributions to the Blues. The next guy is Tom de Koning, gone as a free agent. Like the club, I have a lot more positive things to say about Tom. One, he's a substantially better player, but also he handled himself really well this year. I kind of think that if I was in his position, I probably would have wilted under the pressure as well of knowing that you're leaving for a massive deal. Probably played on him all year. But, he rocked up and played, I think, all but one game. So if it wasn't all games, it was all but one, and might not have been the best on form, but I wouldn't suggest that he didn't try. So that's all you can take. Even down to the last round of the season, he was attending the banner night, to help the rusted on fans prepare the banner for our last game of the season. I think that shows he's a really good bloke, and he's going to get the second highest dollars per year on his deal ever, after Nazariah Wangadeen-Miller, funnily enough, and it's an 8-year deal. So this will be band 1 compensation. Hopefully we get handed that day 1 by the AFL so we can get moving and, maybe turn it into something else. The next player I want to touch on is E.Hollands. Elijah is reported to be leaving for behavioural issues. I do want to note that his absence at the start of the year, it was reported that the reason for the absence was due to some mental health stuff. So I'm not going to comment a lot on it because whether he has behavioural issues off the field, I think the fact that he has reported as also having mental health issues, there deserves to be some sensitivity around it. Now, whatever the behavioural issues are, have made the club told him to go and try to find a new home with a year to go on his deal. And frankly, I wouldn't be stunned if we paid him out if he can't find another place to go. His value probably isn't the best, as this is now the second club he has left due to some behavioural issues. It was a similar reason why the Suns were happy to let him go, without speculating any further. Despite his talent, I would expect that at best we will get a third rounder for him, because unlike some of the other players that I'll go through in a moment, this is a little bit of a fire sale. While his form on the field is excellent when he's played, I think his game against Geelong this year, I thought Harry was best on ground. I probably would have had him as the second. I thought he was absolutely excellent. His kicking and his sort of field vision in particular is something we really lack. So the fact that we've kind of lost a bit of patience with him, I think says a lot. And it's unfortunate, one for him, but also for us, obviously, because we've been looking for that sort of guy and we've decided that we can't trust him, to be a consistent performer for us. I really hope that he can sort out whatever is going on in his personal life and he gets all the help that he might need in order to do so. You only get a short time to be a professional athlete, and he clearly has the talent to do it. So I hope whatever is going on, he's able to get on top of. But I fully expect that Elijah will be gone at the year's end. If we end up welcoming him back because he's shown enough signs that, he's going to take his final chance really seriously, I would honestly have no problem with it. But that's just me trusting, the Graham Wrights, the Nick Austins, the Michael Vosses of the world in their judgment. But if they also decide, Elijah's become a bit too hot to handle for us, well then, so be it. The club has to be bigger than all of the players. But again, if he is off, good luck, and I hope Elijah, you're able to get on top of whatever's going on, mate. Adam Cerra. So I got a few comments about this one. Funnily enough, some saying that our supporters are happy for him to go, and some saying that they desperately wanted him to stay. So in a previous video, I cover my reasons why I'd be happy for him to go, and I encourage you to give it a look. But the basic idea is this. If everyone is fit, he's not in our starting midfield. Starting midfield, not counting wingers, of course, is your ruckman, regardless of who that's going to be. I expect Pitto. And then it would be Walsh, Cripps, and Hewitt for mine. Right now, I think we would still be able to get something decent for him, but this will decrease instantly. 1 year later, he will be worth close to nothing if his injury issues from 2024 and his form from 2025 continue. So, while he still has some currency and he's a little bit on the outer of our main midfield group, I would rather let him go. Because, one, you want to cash in the resource while you can. Adam, the person, is not a resource, but Adam can get us a resource by trading him for a pick of some description. And in addition to that, one benefit is, so if he was going to be the fourth midfielder, now it's going to be someone like Cooper Lord or Jagger Smith. So instead of them getting pushed to a half-forward flank for the entire year, they might be the sort of guy that, start on the half-forward flank, but then they get good time in the midfield through rotations, or they play the extra up at the ball, that sort of a thing, which would be great for their development. They're still really cheap. And I think because he's going to be pushed a little bit down the order, Adam Cerra is, that the guys that could replace him would be able to offer similar output, because obviously with less opportunity, Adam will not be able to do as much, and therefore it sort of closes the gap between whatever he might be able to do and what, the developing guys coming through are able to match. So personally, what I would like to get for him is something like a late first round pick or very early second. I'd personally take it. We have, we gave up pick 8 for him, and largely through injury, it probably hasn't worked out. A few reliable accounts on Twitter a little bit ago suggested that he has some interest from some clubs. So while this isn't the most likely trade to occur, if it happens for the value I've just suggested, so, late first rounder, early second, I'd say somewhere between pick 15 and pick 25. I think it would be good to get some return for him and give the opportunity to the younger guys. Personally, I think that would be a very positive outcome for us. Next is Mitch McGovern. I don't think that Mitch necessarily has a lot of interest, but at the same time, he's out of contract. Carlton famously, or infamously, didn't play him down the stretch, which prevented him from getting his contract trigger, which would have given him a 1-year deal for the 2026 season. There's been some reports he was only 1 or 2 games short, so I think that's pretty ruthless, because I think it was with 3 games to go in the AFL season, he played in the corresponding VFL game. So he easily could have hit the trigger. However, given how honestly disappointing he's been at Carlton, apart from his 2023 season, I have no problems with this. I wasn't making videos back then, so I don't have any proof on the record, but if you ask anyone who knows me, I've always been a defender of Mitch, because one, he seems like a bit of a quirky character. I'm a little bit of an oddball myself, so I have a little bit of empathy for people like that, being like, oh, I think if you support them, then you might be able to get the most out of him, but unfortunately, that hasn't happened with Mitch. And I think the most disappointing part is, I think it makes sense that when he came over, he was a bit out of shape. He was played forward in a bad team. He gets moved to the back line, has an excellent 2023, and he's never recaptured the form since. So I think the start of his time at Carlton not being brilliant kind of makes some amount of sense. 2024 and 25 don't make any sense whatsoever. I know he had a couple of injuries, but his personal form was not very good. I would say guys like him and Cerra are some of the bigger reasons why we were so bad this year. Because that sort of, middle bracket of players, especially when they're veterans, not producing is a big reason why we weren't able to perform quite as well as we would have liked. I think that we're pretty good in terms of the taller defender spots, especially given we're very likely to get Buku Khamis and Harry Dean, who is a first-year player, but should provide some excellent depth. I would rather that we try to find a guy who is cheaper, is either suffering for opportunities elsewhere, or maybe comes from the VFL, I've got a name in mind in particular, to replace someone like Mitch. Because once Harry O'Farrell's injury-free next year, and with Nick Haynes going well, I would imagine that it'll go Wiedering, O'Farrell, and Haynes as our first three-choice taller defenders. So Mitch at best is fourth. He may not even make the team. I mean, you could consider someone like Matt Carroll, who's 190 centimetres himself. He could potentially play that spot. Nick Newman and Lockie Cowan, I think, are 187 and 188 respectively. Not super big, but I've seen them play on taller guys and do a decent job. You could kind of do it through the aggregate. So his spot's not that essential. The guy I'd love for us to go and get, especially because of how much harder he's had to work for his opportunity, is a guy like Ethan Phillips. He previously was on Hawthorn's list. He then has played for Port Melbourne's VFL and for us. I think he's 26 years of age, 197 centimetres, big boy. And he's a marking machine. So he can play that sort of similar role to McGovern, although he's a little bit bigger, maybe not as quick and athletic, but in terms of being that sort of third tall defender who provides really strong contest in the air, I think that Ethan could do that for much less money. And given how hard he's had to work for his opportunities, I'd imagine that, he might be a little bit more indebted for the opportunity, shall we say. Because if there's one thing that I would say about Mitch that I always found frustrating was I was not always convinced that he was trying as hard as possible. Now, I don't think he was doing it on purpose, but someone like Ethan Phillips, I feel like might, I don't like the expression overly, but, he might kill for the opportunity. I think he'd give his left leg for the opportunity might be something I think is a bit of a better thing to say. Look, if we decide to keep Gov and give him a new one-year deal on pretty cheap money, I'm not going to lose any sleep. But I just think that if we can get anything for him, then that would be amazing. And even if you can't, letting him walk as a free agent, I don't think that that's going to hurt us in the slightest, frankly. The last guy I wanted to get to before Charlie Curnow is Blake Acres. My understanding is that Blake has had some interest from a few clubs. Not enough interest for me to be confident in putting it out there who those clubs are, but he's not without suitors. However, at 29, I don't think his value would be exceptionally high. With one exception, he does have a year to go on his contract, so we hold the whip hand. I've talked a lot about third rounders in this video, but, I haven't spoken about the sort of main article yet, so it sort of makes some sense. I think a third rounder would be great for Blake. As per my depth video, wing is a position that lacks depth on our team. Unless we have identified internal replacements or having someone come in externally, this is a guy I'd probably want to hold on to because you're probably not going to get too much. And this year, he was apparently legitimately hampered through injuries. So there's a chance he has a bounce back next year. Trading him just to trade him, unless he is, a bit of an agitator in the locker room, would probably make us a little bit worse. I don't think he's amazing, but we are super light on at wing. Go check out my last video if you haven't, and I go through it there. Therefore, I'd probably want to hold on to him unless there's something longer term that they've planned out already. By the way, if E.Hollands is to go back onto a wing, that's enough for me to change my mind. So if day one of preseason, Vossi comes out and says, look, a year in defence is really good for Ollie's development, but we think he's better suited on a wing. Acres, cheers, mate. Catch you on the flip side. Want a third rounder for you because, you got a year to go. Or maybe he could be the sort of guy, that could go back to Fremantle for Liam Reidy or goes to West Coast for Campbell Chesser. Good for you, mate. But if we're sticking with the current setup that we have and we're not looking to bring too many guys in to play on a wing, then I'd probably want to hold on to him. Now, this is probably the part that most people have been wanting to hear. So let's get into Charlie Curnow stuff. As it currently stands on Sunday, the 28th of September, multiple journalists have come out saying Carlton is adamant of getting an established player in return for Charlie. So I think we can put to bed that we will fold and take a handful of bad picks and or players. I think it really is as simple as it comes down to two choices. Either we get what we want, which is a deal where we win it, or he stays. And just before I get into a little bit of the combinations around it, the thing that I think the clubs that are trying to get him need to keep in mind is it's win based on today's value. If they can get Charlie back to being a Coleman medal level forward, then it can be a win-win. It's just based on him kicking 30-odd goals this season, Carlton's winning that deal or he stays. He has 4 years left to go on his deal. Despite his agent putting out some quite interesting things to the media to try to make us look bad, Carlton hasn't blinked. And we just keep saying, yep, required player, he's staying. And the journalists that are sort of around the story keep saying as much. Either give us one of your good players or he ain't going anywhere. So let's get into the main clubs that we need to have a look at. Just quickly, I know there was a report Collingwood's interested. Unless they're giving us Nick Dacos, it's not going to happen. So I think we can move past that rapidly. Geelong. Tough break yesterday, Geelong. But I don't think you're going to be getting Charlie either. They have a bit of a funny list in that they have a lot of very old players, and the few younger players that they have that are very good, like Bailey Smith and Max Holmes, that are the sorts of caliber of the players that would be needed to get the deal done, they are not going to trade under any circumstance. There's a few players I like, but I think, frankly, they'd need to put multiple first-rounders with them for it to be a commensurate deal for Carlton to get to be willing to accept it. The two players that I really like are Ollie Dempsey and Connor O'Sullivan. That's the full list. If they're not going to trade us guys like Bailey Smith or Max Holmes, then it's Ollie Dempsey, Connor O'Sullivan plus 2 first-round picks. I don't think that's going to happen, frankly. The way I try to think of this deal is that the player offered has to be the best part of the deal to satisfy Carlton. If Carlton keeps saying, we want one of your best players, what to me that means is that the most compelling part of the trade has to be the player that is in it. So it can't be 2 first-round picks and, I don't want to pick on someone, but, like an end-of-the-list guy. So, well, turns out in my script, I am actually about to pick on someone. So someone who's been rumoured is Shannon Neal, who I think is a nice player, but if he's the cornerstone of the deal, by default, your package is not good enough to get it done. Because Shannon Neal, plus 2 first-round picks, I would argue the first-round picks might be more valuable. I think he's a good player, but I think the picks might be more valuable. And therefore, not a good enough deal to get it done. So the next team to consider are the Gold Coast Suns. I think they can probably get it done because they have so much to offer. However, I doubt we would get any of their sort of tier 1 players. And by tier 1, I mean, Raul Anderson and Ben King. So there's murmurs around that some second-tier players like Bailey Humphrey may be available. There were reports on Sam Flanders as well, because he was meeting with Carlton, but the Saints have done what the Saints do and have gone a bit overboard with their offer for him, offering their first-round pick and a 5-year, $900,000 a year offer for him. So we can rule out Sam Flanders because gosh knows we're not offering anything like that. Either way, a second tier player or players like Bailey Humphrey plus draft picks might be enough to get it done. I would suggest that what it might need to be is Bailey Humphrey plus they have pick 6. I think it's from Port Adelaide. I might have that one wrong, but they traded a future first round pick last year with another club that this year is pick 6. So it might be Flanders, pick 6, and the Gold Coast Suns future first, which given they would be getting Charlie, they'd be expecting to go up the ladder. So that future first might not be, 15, 16, 17, 18. It would help us to get Cody Walker. The other player that has sort of been thrown around a little bit is Jed Walter. I personally, not the biggest fan, but what I would say is I haven't seen enough of him. I think he has a lot of traits that are really nice. He obviously won the grand final sprint, so he's very, very quick, 195 centimetres. He actually reminds me a lot of Charlie, but maybe a little bit more aggressive. Obviously nowhere near as developed. But I think that, look, if he got included in a deal, it could be worthwhile, but ultimately, of their players that I think we could reasonably get, Bailey Humphrey would sort of be the one that I would want the most. But given they have some other significant draft capital, I think that sort of a deal could get it done. And to be clear, I am saying that Bailey Humphrey is worth slightly more than pick 6 in this year's draft, because this year's draft is not meant to be, the greatest draft of all time. So still sort of accords with the idea that the best thing in the trade has to be the player. So if we go from there, the final team to look at is Sydney. They have met with Charlie. Dean Cox met with Charlie before he went on his end-of-season trip. I mentioned this in a recent video, but Carlton has been steadfast that guys like Ollie Florent and Braden Campbell are not getting the deal done. It also needs to be someone significant. And in a segment on Footy Classified, they referred to the significant names being Heaney, Goulden, Warner and Blakey. Before we get any further, I just want to say this now. I am not a Nick Blakey fan. I'm not saying he's bad before anyone gets too arky about it. I do not think that Nick Blakey is in the same class as the other 3 players mentioned. I would say Nick Blakey is maybe better than... is maybe on the same level as or better than a Bailey Smith in terms of his value. Not Bailey Smith, pardon me, Bailey Humphries. I would say that Nick Blakey is roughly on the same level as a Bailey Humphries, and part of the reason for that is the position that they play. Nick Blakey is a halfback flanker. I think that they are less valuable than a half forward who can go on the ball, kicks goals, tremendously valuable. My main reason for not loving Nick Blakey as a player is he stands at 195 centimetres, but insists as playing as a smaller running defender. I think it is quite interesting that before their first game of the year versus Hawthorn this season, Dean Cox in an interview was asked, this is all paraphrased, will Nick Blakey be playing on at all? And Dean responded saying he should be expected to. The reason he said this was because Tom McCartan at the start of the season for Sydney was playing as a forward. So the Swans needed some more support down back. However, after I think it was 2 games, they gave up on the experiment. And a big reason for that was that Blakey could not handle playing as a tall defender. I think he is a very good player, but I think he's a little bit more sizzle than substance, and he is reliant on the team around him. So many players are. It's not a big knock, but that is why I don't think he's in the same class as the other 3 that I mentioned in Heaney, Goulden and Warner. Definitely not saying he's bad, just in case anyone wants to say anything in the comments. But to me, just a little bit overrated. He deserves his All-Australian honours last year, but I don't think he's going to be a regular for that honour. And if I had to take the over-under or a bet on if he'd make it again, I would probably take no that he won't. Anyway, let's move on to the other 3 players then. So, I think that Chad Warner is probably no chance because he's a flight risk given his reported interest in moving back to Perth. Heaney is the face of the Sydney Swans, so we can rule him out right now, despite the fact he'd obviously be excellent. You could toss in someone like Callum Mills as well, even though he wasn't mentioned by Damien Barrett, Sam McClure and Matthew Lloyd in that particular segment of Footy Classified, but he's literally their captain, so I doubt that would occur. That really only leaves Goulden. And gosh, he would fix a lot wrong with our team. He's a fabulous, fabulous ball mover, both by foot and by run and carry. He's mainly a winger, which, as I've suggested a couple of times, is an area that we lack depth. He can also play on the ball legitimately. He's also a goal kicker with 75 goals from 103 games, which for a non-forward is awesome. However, I want to be really, really clear. I don't think I'm doing groundbreaking analysis by saying that Errol Goulden is good at football. So, the pressure for mine is all on the Swans. Damien Barrett said as much when he said the Swans can't afford to go into another season without an established key forward. John Ralph said on the midweek tackle this past week that Carlton have all the power. If you're going to have a coach meet with Charlie, you better be prepared to get the deal done because the optics don't look very good. So, if it isn't Goulden, you better go find a disgruntled player at another club and do a three-way deal. Otherwise, Charlie is very likely to stay put. A word of warning to the Swans, they will probably never get him again. Or a player of his calibre, at least in the next, say, 3 to 5 years. If you look at Joe Danaher, Sydney almost got him, but then the deal fell over with Essendon. The next season, Brisbane swooped in, and that was history. Sydney haven't been able to get a power forward in that sort of mould ever since. If they don't do it now, guys like Charlie Stature aren't available every off-season, so they might have to wait for a while. After some frankly silly reports from the media suggesting trades like Braden Campbell in a first rounder, on Friday, John Ralph has reported that Sydney is looking to offer 2 firsts and Will Hayward. Now we're getting somewhere. My view with trades is that it's not about as much as what is occurring at the time, but more the trends. So when Code Sport put out their multiple trade offerings a couple of months ago, and again, it was guys like Braden Campbell or Ollie Florent in a first-round pick. But now it's been reported by the media that it's 2 first-round picks and a very good role player in Will Hayward, not a superstar by any stretch, but a really good role player. What that says to me is that the media has some new information suggesting where the deal may end up. The trend is moving upwards in terms of Charlie's value. I don't think this is the final offer from the Swans either, because again, if Carlton is true to their word, and I believe that they would be, a guy like Will Hayward is not good enough to be the best part of a deal. However, the trend going in the right direction might mean maybe we can shake out a little bit more value. Personally, I'll keep dreaming of getting Errol. Call me misguided if you would like, but hey, look, it's a trade period, it's here for fun, so I'm going to keep on dreaming. Hopefully, it's a sign that the trade is heading in the right direction and the Swans are becoming a bit at peace of what they're going to maybe need to give up. Otherwise, he's staying put. See how we go. One thing I want to note with Carlton is that we have been eerily quiet. Normally, Carlton is one of the noisier clubs, but since Graham Ryder's come in, we basically haven't leaked at all, which is awesome. The only news that we have really heard is the players that have requested trades from their respective clubs. So that information very well could have come from their side as opposed to ours. This does make me think there could be a few more shots left to fire. This is particularly likely given the Charlie stuff. By definition, if he leaves, it'll be for a notable trade. It'll probably be the biggest trade that has occurred in the last 5 years. Probably since Jeremy Cameron. It will be the biggest trade since then. I have my fingers crossed it includes a really notable player or two coming back our way, Errol Goulden, but such a seismic shift could mean that other things shake loose as well. Because if we're able to secure someone who's, a top ender, all of the myth around, Carlton's a complete basket case, we're not North. We're not Essendon. And I think as well that other players around the league would look at some of the players that have been rumoured to leave, like Mitch McGovern, like Blake Acres, like E.Hollands, would know a little bit more than maybe the public doesn't think to themselves that, look, if those guys are on the way out, things might actually improve. I have my fingers crossed that there is a little bit more water to go under the bridge. So this has been my overview based on things that are publicly known, again, as at the 28th of September, the Sunday. I think there is likely a bit more going on, and given that, I wouldn't be surprised if this video is redundant in a couple of days, but I thought it would be a good sort of primer, a line in the sand of where we are now that the grand final's over. If you like what I'm doing, please give me a like or a subscribe. If you want to engage, push back, agree, disagree, give me some ideas, please leave a comment. If you want to look at any of those videos that I've previously mentioned about, the value of Adam Cerra, of Mitch McGovern, of Charlie, they're all in my list series playlist. So feel free to give that a look. You can also find me over at Blue Sky at Blues Kind Show. Thanks everyone for watching. This has been my longest video to date, and I really appreciate you for staying with me through to the end. And as always, go Blues!